Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Marvel United Spider-Geddon. Spider-Geddon is the newest Marvel United set, a straight-to-retail set that has, well, a whole lot of Spider-themed content. Now, before I go into this, just a bit of background around Marvel United, myself, my opinions around it. I think Marvel United is fantastic. That doesn't really change around Spider-Geddon. I do have specific thoughts. I will briefly go into how the game plays without heavily going into it just because of how much Marvel United content is. I'm going to try to keep it to very short. But in general, Marvel United to me is a 4.5 out of 5. The general system of Marvel United has pros and cons, but it's a game that I have played so much, continue to enjoy. I enjoy it with friends, I enjoy it solo, I enjoy it with my family. It just works well. It has a wide variety of characters. They've constantly tweaked the systems across multiple games, and arguably Spider-Geddon kind of feels like the culmination of a lot of those all in one system. One thing I've said about Marvel United in the past is that the pure base set of Marvel United I don't think gives you that level of enjoyment that I get out of the larger amounts of Marvel United that are out there, and that might not be true with Spider-Geddon. Spider-Geddon kind of feels like they really took everything they've learned to date, put it into a single set. I have a slight con as far as how things are done, but overall I'm going to talk about what things are done over here, the general system, the improvements we've seen across those systems, some of the specific characters and villains you're fighting against, all of that. We're going to go into that, but first I'm going to give you the very short, minute-long overview of how this system works in case you are new to the system. Marvel United is a system in which you are facing off against a villain. You're going to have a villain over here. You have to accomplish some of these goals first before the villain becomes vulnerable. So before we can even touch the villain in any way, shape, or form, and it's worth noting, purple characters are going to be characters that are both villains and heroes. You can choose how you want to play them. Red characters are going to be the villains, and blue characters are going to be the heroes. And you have the anti-villains or the anti-heroes are the specific name for the purple characters. So right now we're facing off against anti-venom. Wrong characters over here. We're facing against anti-venom over here. As we face them off, that's going to be our villain character right now, and we have to accomplish 2 of these 3 goals, and these goals are clearing threats from various locations around the board, or defeating thugs, that's going to be these guys over here, or defeating or rescuing civilians around there. To do that, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing cards into a timeline. So you're going to be creating a timeline as you go, where you play cards that I can go ahead and punch somebody with Silk's ability over there, but then I can go ahead and play this card into the timeline, and not only do I get my own ability, not only do I get my rescue civilians over here, but I also get the card before it. Effectively, you're teaming up with previous cards as you go. The only downside is the villain also gets to go, which means the villain is going to be playing cards into the timeline as well, and that means they're going to be moving around the board, adding characters to locations, triggering their own negative abilities, and your job effectively is to try to defeat the villain before time runs out. And time runs out means that you could have your characters defeated. You could go ahead and have the villain run out of cards in their master plan deck. There are a variety of ways you can lose, but you're trying to get 2 of those 3 missions done so that the villain becomes vulnerable, so that you can then take them down, dealing damage to them. That's kind of the highlight of the systems, but there's a lot of things that have been learnt along the way, and it feels like all of those are present in Spider-Geddon. First of all, we have starting hand abilities. Right now over here, I have Ultimate Spider-Man. I think his name's Superior Spider-Man over here. We're using his card deck over here, and he has 2 starting hand cards. In fact, so does Silk. Silk also has 2 starting hand cards. Actually, the one's over... No, 1 starting hand card, my bad. No, 2 starting hand cards. So they both have starting hand cards. That means these are cards that will start in their hand, which means you're going to see more flavor from those characters. This is an evolution that was done between the very first Marvel United to the second Marvel United to X-Men United, where you have specific cards that will start in your hand, ensuring that you as a character... Sure, we have this single punch over here, which can show up whenever, but we have these 2 core abilities that are going to define how the character operates, and those start in our hand. I believe all of the characters, I have to double check, all or most, actually maybe one doesn't, all or most of the characters in Spider-Geddon have starting hand cards defining the ways they operate, getting extra movement when they wouldn't otherwise have it. In the case of Superior Spider-Man, he has these cool little spider bats that are awesome. In fact, he has more than that. He even has a card that's a bottom of the deck card. This is the last card played by him, and when you play it, you're going to go ahead and you're going to be KO'd and replace it with another spider hero. So that's actually a bottom of the deck card, which means you can't really run through your deck the way you normally would in this game, so you have to be more mindful of taking damage. That's going to be one of the first evolutions that makes the characters stand out a bit more, and they really took advantage of that with some of these characters. I think Superior Spider-Man by far is my favorite in terms of the way he has these spider bots and what he does, but honestly they all stand out pretty strongly. You're going to have Spider-Man Noir, or I don't know the names of the characters as well, so forgive me there, but we have Spider-Man Noir over there who can avoid damage if he's alone in an area. You're going to have a bunch of characters that dance around in different ways, and you're also going to have equipment, which is a good tangent to the 3rd evolution when you go to Spider-Man Multiverse, or Spider-Man Marvel United Multiverse. I lost my train of thought there. Marvel United Multiverse was the third Kickstarter campaign for Marvel United, and it introduced a few things. First of all, it introduced the equipment over here, where you can have a few different equipment. So you can see over here, Superior Spider-Man already has one equipment here, and in order to compensate for the benefit equipment gives you, you are going to remove your double critical hit from the game to give you that balance to it. And one character that sees it in particular is going to be, you're going to see over here, the batteries on Penny. Oh, that's her name. What's her name again? Just give me a second to figure this out over here because I don't remember. Penny Parker. Penny Parker over here has a bunch of cards that are going to rely on her expending her batteries. The problem is she can't get them back. Some equipment is going to give you a way to refresh it, but in the case of the batteries, you start with 3 batteries, but if you use them, you lose them, but you have to use those batteries to power up certain cards in your deck, which again gives you a trade-off because there's more than 3 cards that use batteries. So you have to do a bit of a push and pull of figuring out which ones work for you. And so the introduction of equipment is present in Spider-Geddon. In Spider-Geddon, it's giving you a bunch of characters. I think 4 different characters are going to have equipment, or say, is it 4? Nope, I apologize. It's not 4. 3 different characters. No, 4. Yeah, 4 different characters in Spider-Geddon are going to have equipment that you can utilize. Again, you take a card out of the deck to balance, but they're going to give you extra things, extra degree of control. Again, making your character stand out further because you're gonna have starting hand cards, but you also have equipment, so your character really will feel unique as opposed to just playing a bunch of symbols as you go. We're also going to have a bunch of locations, and I think the locations operate pretty nicely, including Las Vegas over here, which ultimately is a gambling location where you can try to make a guess about the master plan card and then either win or lose depending how it went. So a bit of a gamble in Las Vegas, which thematically is appropriate. So you have a bunch of locations over here. I don't think the locations stood out that strongly to me, but they definitely are locations. I think 8 locations in the game. You'll be using 6 game to game. Those all work over there. So we have the starting hand cards, we have the equipment, we have the true solo mode, which has a different name for it, Commander Solo Mode or something like that. Let's figure out what the name over here is. The name for the solo mode is Commander Solo Mode. Commander Solo Mode is the solo mode for that was introduced during Marvel United Multiverse, and that's going to give you these cards over here, where you're going to choose a certain amount of points worth of cards that will help you out as you play supporting heroes. So you can have different supporting heroes decks you can utilize, and these will give you different ways to mess with that, which gives you a bit more of a true solo mode than you've seen in the original Marvel United. And again, that's something I've actually played that already, even as far back as the Kickstarter campaign for Marvel United. I had a chance to dive into that. You can see a playthrough on my channel, and I found that the true solo mode really does work well, making it feel less like you're just two-handing a bunch of characters, and really like it's a different puzzle for solo players who want to dive into this universe while still experiencing other decks and seeing a bit more as far as your supporting heroes in the game. You're also, of course, going to have Supervillain mode. This was introduced, I don't recall where this was introduced, I apologize. I think it was introduced during X-Men United, but I could be mistaken. But the Supervillain mode is going to have these cards over here, where you have a player controlling the villain against the other players using both their own, knowledge as far as their own ability to not just randomly play our cards, but to have a degree of agency over the choices, but also giving them these supervillain cards that are going to power them up. But in return, we also have superhero cards that all of these cards have triggers. So when you see certain things happening, you can do a certain thing, but it's also going to give those benefits to the heroes as well, giving them their own also, ability to hold their own against the hero, letting you play this game not only with five players, 1 villain and 4 heroes, but you can even play the supervillain mode against a solo character if you want to do Commander Solo versus Supervillain. That's going to be a bunch of the mechanical changes you're going to be seeing all coming together within the Spider-Geddon core box that I don't know the price point of this, but if it holds up to the previous price points on this stuff, you'll be able to pick this up easily in the $30 range or less, especially if you're patient. Maybe it starts at $35. I don't know exactly where this is, but this is a cheap, affordable core box. Which brings us to the characters. Because the characters in the game, we're going to have 4 villains to face off against, or more specifically 2 villains and 2 anti-heroes. We're going to have, right now I have Anti-Venom set up over here. Anti-Venom is going to be trying to get rid of your cards with abilities. So he actually works against all the things that make your heroes stand out. He's kind of draining that from you. He's going to be making you discard cards with abilities. He's going to make you turn cards face down in the battle plan, which really makes him an incredibly frustrating character to fight against, because win or lose, you feel less special as you play. Meanwhile, you're going to have over here Morlun. Morlun's going to be a character who's just doing a ton of damage, but allowing you to sub in new heroes, but the problem is once you lose 4 heroes, you'll still lose the game. All his threat cards over here are going to be various characters, and they're all just hitting you. They're hitting you hard. Morlun is ultimately about core damage, just 2 damage to your characters. We have Superior Spider-Man, which is a fascinating character to play against, because it kind of feels like you're facing off against another character who's trying to help the city. That's what it kind of feels like, because he's going to play out his own 3 missions, and the same time you're trying to defeat thugs, rescue civilians, and clear threats, he is trying to do the same thing as you play, which makes it a fascinating puzzle to face off against. Very intriguing. One of the more interesting heroes I've played in a while in the Marvel United universe. And then lastly, we have Spot over here. Spot is going to be dealing with effectively trying to camouflage himself and avoid damage. He's going to start with crisis tokens and be constantly hopping around various locations around the board. His cards are going to have him hopping around to locations, but that does enable you to kind of track where he's going. But as long as he has crisis tokens, when you hit him, he's just going to evade to the next location. So you kind of have to hit him knowing you're going to miss and keep on missing until eventually you can deplete him of those tokens and then hopefully go in for the win. Those are going to be the 4 characters you're facing off against, and arguably, I'm trying to think which one's the simplest over here. They all are complicated in their own way. If this is one of those things where if you've played original Marvel United, or even if you've played X-Men United, sometimes the characters can seem a bit simple. That is not true with the villains you are facing off against in this game. All of them are complicated in their own way. Spot might be the simplest, I'm not sure. But, Superior Spider-Man is his own complete mini-puzzle. Morlun is simple, but with a lot of stuff happening. These characters all give you a lot of things to consider as you try to survive or face off against them. They are definite puzzles to try to play, and they give you a decent amount of rules overhead to juggle relative to what Marvel United is. So this is definitely not your starter core set if you're looking for something that is the most accessible in Marvel United, but if you're looking for that extra degree of rules crunch, these villains definitely do give you that extra degree of rules crunch. Speaking of which, we have the characters you're facing the heroes you are being in this game. Past the thematic aspect of having Silk, of having Penny Parker, of having Detective Noir, of having Scarlet Spider, of having all these characters, past the thematic preference for what you want from these, the characters do range in how simple they are. The villains are all complicated, but one of my biggest complaints against Marvel United has always been that the characters feel less interesting than the villains in this game. Playing as a hero is often far less intriguing to the puzzle you're trying to solve versus the villains who feel incredibly intricate, or relatively incredibly intricate for the system at hand. And to that end, we have a bunch of characters, and some do feel more simple than others. You're going to have a degree of evasion in these characters. My personal favorite is Superior Spider-Man, both as a villain and as a hero. He is by far the highlight of the set for me. He's going to be dropping these, and again, both as a hero or as a villain, both as a hero or as a villain, he's going to be dropping the little spider bots around the board to enable him to help you out. As a hero, using them to deal damage or to evade damage. It depends on the card you're using. The 2 different cards you're going to have in their hand that you can utilize. They're both your starting hand cards, but he's going to be dropping around those board. And again, it feels like, most characters are not dropping these tokens down. By the way, you also have some villains that have this degree of time management, where you are accelerating or decelerating the master plan cards as you go. There's a bunch of fun effects going on in some of the villains you're facing off against. Past that, I'd say the characters in general just feel good. They don't feel amazing. Some are more basic than others. If I recall correctly, Scarlet Spider felt a little bit more basic, versus Detective Noir felt like a little challenge to be on his own in the shadows, trying to avoid damage, and Silk as well had some opportunities as well. I have to go through all the cards, remember which ones were which over here, but they all had a bit more oomph to them. If you're comparing it to base Marvel United, the characters definitely have more oomph to those characters, more interesting cards, and a lot more. Most of the characters have more than 3 core abilities, and when you combine it with the equipment in the starting hand, overall Marvel United has continued to evolve as a system, giving you that extra degree of something that makes the characters feel different. They still are the weakest part of the game for me. The characters still are the weakest part of the game, but they are significantly better than pulling out that base copy of Marvel United with Captain America and Thor and Iron Man and whoever else is in that set. They are far more intricate than that original first iteration of the game. So a large step up, while still being sometimes the weakest part of the game. Ultimately, symbols are symbols, and chaining a bunch of, fight, move, rescue symbols around the board isn't always as interesting. Now, my one complaint against the set, as far as a step, not really backwards, but something to be mindful of, is to a large extent the way the heroes and the characters are designed. It often does feel like they're designed as a cohesive set. Meaning, if you look at some of the abilities that the villains have, if you look at some of the abilities that the heroes have, it does feel very much like they're designed with each other in mind, which is a pro and a con. Because if you're playing Spider-Geddon, it feels like you have a set that's designed to work together. It feels like the heroes specifically counter the villains, and vice versa. You have cards that will let you avoid damage, but then you have lots of villains that are like, you can't avoid damage in this situation, and that feels like it's something that's very much based against one another. The downside is that if you are mixing this into a larger ecosystem of Marvel United content, if you just have a ton of Marvel United content and you're just throwing it all together and not necessarily pairing things up, you'll lose a drop of that. Not necessarily a ton, it won't be the end of the world, but you will lose a drop of that if you are pairing this all up or just mixing it together into a single bulk set. So, where am I on Marvel United in general, Spider-Geddon, all that? Ultimately, this is a great core set. If you are looking, I've constantly said in the past that I think base Marvel United will not give you the full Marvel United experience. I don't know if that's true anymore. Spider-Geddon may well give you the full Marvel United experience. Now, it will not give you the giant amounts of content out there. It will not give you the various expansions that give you entirely new ways to approach the game. Going through, Thanos and Infinity War, playing through an arc of 4 games is still fun. It's still one of the moments in Marvel United that I fully enjoy. Facing off against the Sentinels in First Class, was it? I don't remember which it was, but facing off against Sentinels is one of my favorite versions of playing Marvel United, and so you still won't get some of those things out of Spider-Geddon. But I think if you buy Spider-Geddon, you are getting a set of Marvel United that really does deliver one of the best intro versions of Marvel United at an affordable price point without having to go crazy on all the stuff. And if you're looking to experience this game, to enjoy this game, to appreciate this game, and to do all that for $35 as opposed to the potential $1,000 you can otherwise spend on this system, I think Spider-Geddon is the way to go. I think it's the set to start with. I think it just has all the best parts of Marvel United baked into a single core set at a very affordable price point, and in my opinion, it's the best way to see if this system is for you if you are someone that is used to tabletop games. Versus if you are here as someone who's, looking for more information on Marvel United, this might be a drop more complicated than what you're looking for. You might want to start with X-Men United core set, or alternatively the regular Marvel United core set to see the core concepts at play, and then if you feel like that's intriguing but you want a drop more complexity, at that point you might want to up to Spider-Geddon. So, does this change my rating on Marvel United? No, Marvel United for me is a 4.5 out of 5, and it has been for a long time. It's a game that I've continued to enjoy, continue to appreciate. It is not a perfect game, but it's a highly accessible game that is rewarding and fun to play through, and one that I'm always happy to just sit down and play. I think this improves my opinion of what a core set can do. But my overall opinion of Marvel United is still a 4.5 out of 5. I like the characters. I like this particular core set. I highly recommend this core set, and this core set would be a 4.5 out of 5 for me. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.